Hello and welcome to School Diversity Week from Just Like Us. Um, this week's been running for many weeks, and like other things this year, we've had to reinvent it. So we are delivering masterclasses online. We are very lucky that a lot of quite cool people have decided to come and help us with this. Um, so we also have some of my fellow ambassadors here to help deliver some of the content of the video. So first off, we have a clip about how to stay safe online.
Hello, we hope you're enjoying loads of interesting activities for School Diversity Week. Millions of young people are a part of this, and you must keep safe online. So as part of this, we are moderating and disabling public comments you might make on our social media so we can protect your identities. If you do want to communicate something to us, please just direct message us on our social media platforms, or you can email info@justlikeus.org so we make sure that we're still protecting your identity. Justlikeus.org/betteronline has more information about this, and also has some information about where you can go for help or where someone else can go if they need help.
Right, so this session is mainly going to consist of a talk from Sabah about gender diversity, and then a Q&A session afterwards. So, a little bit about Sabah. They describe themselves as an activist about everything being to do with being brown, trans and hairy, although reluctantly. They helped co-found the Brighton Trans Pride, as well as they describe themselves as being a writer, a public speaker, and is training to be a therapist. So I'm sure that they share your difficulties with education online. Over to Sabah.
Thank you, Ryan, for that lovely introduction. My name is Sabah. I am a trans youth worker, public speaker, and writer, and I am going to be delivering your masterclass today on gender diversity. My pronouns are they, them, and theirs. For example, did you see Sabah's masterclass? Yeah, they were great. I like to start with my pronouns because we don't always know who someone is based on what we think they look like. And when you want to talk about them later, you want to compliment them in the right way. Kind of like don't judge a book by its cover. I think we've heard that one before, right? So pronouns are he, she, they, and many more. They're basically the words that we use for someone when we're not saying their name. And we use them when we're talking about more than one person, or when we don't know what gender someone is. And we do this every day. For example, if someone rings the doorbell, we'll say, who's at the door? What do they want? So we use gender neutral pronouns without even thinking about it. I want to normalize this. And I also want us to normalize starting with pronouns as well. If you're watching this with someone, why not try it out? Introduce yourself. What's your name? And what's your pronouns? And just for fun, if you were an animal, which would you be? Pause the video and give it a go. Thank you. So what I've been speaking about already highlights the importance of language. Language is powerful, and language is personal. It's up to each person what words they prefer. We all have our favourite words and our preferred ways of describing ourselves, right? Language is also political. Reclaiming words for people who have faced oppression, words that have negative meanings or have been used to hurt someone, can be taken back so they have a positive, more empowering feeling. Are there any words that you can think of right now? Words that have been made to hurt people and that have been taken back by those people to make it empowering? I'll share one with you later. And again, it's not the same for everyone. As I said, it's personal, and words can still hurt us. So when you learn about new terminologies, new words, take the time to understand where the meanings of those words come from. Because if we don't know what they mean, then we don't know the impact that it has. I don't want to make you afraid of saying the wrong thing. It's okay to just say sorry when you do make a mistake. And it's also okay to just ask if you're not sure how to describe someone or what pronouns or words they prefer to use. I've already showed you how we can do that by asking you what your pronouns at the start of this presentation. And I know these aren't everyday questions, they can sound a bit clunky, But to be honest, it's less embarrassing than getting it wrong. So let's get straight into it. I'm going to show you a series of spectrums, which are going to be a really helpful tool as to just how we can understand ourselves and parts of our identities. The first one I want to start with is biological sex. So what's the first thing a doctor will say when a baby is born? It's a girl, or it's a boy. Based on what they think that the baby's genitals look like, they assign an M or an F on a birth certificate. As it says, it's usually determined at birth based on an observation of genitals, whether it's a penis or a vagina. However, this isn't always really clear, and you can see the word intersex there in the middle. You might have heard this word before, or maybe you can take a guess based on the position of that word there between male and female. Intersex is kind of an umbrella term for many conditions of ambiguous genitals or different variations of internal sex organs or chromosomes. It's not uncommon, but intersex people do face a lot of discrimination and stigma because they don't fit this sex binary. They don't fit male or female. And it makes me wonder if the binary is a problem here instead of those people. The next spectrum I'm going to introduce you to is gender identity. Your gender identity is how you think about yourself, the gender that you identify with or feel that you are. This might not be something that you've ever really had to think about. Some people feel as if though they also don't have a gender at all and refer to themselves as agender or non-gendered, just a different way of saying they're without a gender. And like I said, some people might not think about this, and if you don't, that's okay. You can see there that there's man and woman on either side, which is why we call it a gender binary, because there's two. But you can see on the spectrum that there's a whole range of identities that can fall within that, and that is basically what non-binary means. Again, it's an umbrella term of any identities that aren't man and aren't women. I remember a young person once said to me that there's more than just blue and pink in the rainbow, and I thought that was a really great way to see that the rainbow of gender identities is huge and very vast. We are more than just man and women, right? So for people who haven't thought about their gender identity before, we can call them cisgender, which means that their gender matches their gender assigned at birth. It's not a bad word or a slur or anything. It's simply just a word to describe these kinds of people. Cis meaning staying the same. And for people whose gender moves about on the spectrum and it's different from the sex they were assigned at birth, we call them transgender. Trans meaning across. So gender is fluid and gender is really individual. Gender is different in different cultures, and all over the world, different genders beyond man and woman exist. The next slide, I keep messing this up. The next spectrum I'm going to show you is sexual orientation. So this is basically the types of people that you find yourself attracted to. And that can be emotional, sexual, physical, or spiritual. Or you could find yourself without any sexual attraction at all, and people call themselves asexual. So this might also be something that you have never thought about either, which is also totally okay. Whether you are attracted to men or women or neither. Other words that you see are bisexual or pansexual. You can see they're in the middle there, which basically means that you're attracted to both men and women, or all genders. The last spectrum I'm going to show you is gender expression. I think this one is the most fun. It's really fun to play about with gender expression, and I think it can be quite powerful as well. Your gender expression is how you display your gender and is shown through the ways that you act, the ways that you dress, the ways that you interact with the world and how you behave, all in relation to the gender expectations of your society, so where you are. This might not be something that you really think about either. And on the other hand, it could be something that changes all the time. I like this because it shows that your gender expression can be really fluid and move around. So from masculine to feminine to somewhere in the middle where you can't really tell or you're not really sure, which is what that word is in the middle there, androgynous. So here are all the spectrums on this little genderbread person. You can see that our identities exist on spectrums and they can change, they can move, and there's fluidity. One thing I really like about this is that parts of our identities, our sex, our gender, our sexuality, our expression, are all on separate spectrums, which means that they don't all rely on each other. So you could be female on your biological sex could be female, but your gender identity could be something else. And you could be attracted to women, but your gender expression could be androgynous or feminine or something else altogether. These parts of our identities are related because we're a whole person, but they don't determine what we might feel in another spectrum. I wonder if there's anything that might not feel right about this, though, just by looking at it and just by what I've told you already. Because when I think about my identity, it feels a lot more complicated than that. Sometimes I feel feminine and masculine at the same time, for example. But how do I fit that in these spectrums here? So this is where I'm going to introduce you to the gender unicorn, my BFF. Welcome to the gender unicorn. I wonder how many differences you can spot just by looking now. Definitely more spectrums, right? There are more spectrums, which means more options. I can see gender, expression, and sexuality has been broken into sexually attracted to and romantically or emotionally attracted to. I really like this. I think it can look a bit scary, but maybe the best way to understand this is by sharing a personal story. And I think that is kind of one of the best ways that we can learn about something new. So let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm going to just mark up my identity on these little spectrums with a little pink cross. So give me a second whilst I do that. Brilliant. So I'll start with what you can see in the middle there. Sex assigned at birth. So when I was born, a doctor looked at me, looked at my genitals, saw I had a vagina and assigned me female at birth. And then put a little F marker on my birth certificate. And that was kind of, and and my sex assigned at birth has been female, and that stayed with me and will stay the same for the rest of my life. However, over the course of my life, that has actually been less and less important and something I don't even think about anymore. My sex assigned at birth is something that is really only ever between people who I have romantic relationships with or my doctor. The next thing that I'm going to tell you about is my gender identity. So when I was younger, my gender identity was a girl or a woman, and I didn't think about any other genders. I didn't even know about any other genders, so I probably would have only marked the spectrum marked female there. But then when I came out as trans and I started to realize that you can be more than just a woman or a man, I identified a lot with being called a trans man, meaning that my sex assigned at birth was female, but now my gender is as a man, as trans man. Again, I didn't really identify with any of the other genders. I stopped identifying as a woman or feeling anything related to that, and just stuck with being called a trans man, and I asked people to use he, him pronouns for me as well. I think more recently, though, I have started to feel like my gender is a bit more fluid than that, and I've started to be a bit more comfortable with just being really in between man and woman, so really enjoying being in the middle, and I like to just call myself transgender. Transgender person. Other words I like are gender fluid as well, because I really like the way that my gender can be fluid as well and move around a bit, and it's not fixed, which even from just what I've told you now, you can see that it hasn't been fixed at all. my gender expression and presentation, as you might guess, has also changed a lot over time. I think that when I was younger, I think I was quite masculine. I would wear boys' clothes even when I was a kid, and I think yeah, I didn't really like any kind of femininity or anything associated with that, and really enjoyed being masculine and being butch. I think more recently, again though, maybe it's being more comfortable with my gender identity, but it's made me feel a bit more comfortable with also playing around with masculinity and femininity as well, and feeling comfortable in both and having both parts going on at the same time. So things like I think I wear more makeup now. I look more masculine. I mean, I paint my nails. I will always paint my nails. I think that's something that's gonna stay with me. I like wearing lots of jewelry and bright colors, and even more recently, I started wearing clothes that you buy from a women's section. So my expression and presentation changes quite a lot, and I think day to day, which is also totally okay as well. Again, that's a bit more fluid. And of course, my gender expression and presentation also changes depending on where I am. And I have to think about things like safety, because unfortunately, it's not always safe to be visible as gender non-conforming. So let's go down to the two spectrums at the bottom. So sexually attracted to and romantically attracted to. I love that this is separated, just in the way that I can think about my attraction as being, I guess, more complicated and understanding myself a bit better. I used to identify as a lesbian when I was a woman, and I didn't think about having any attractions to men or other genders. I didn't know there were any other genders, and I didn't think that. I think I just didn't have enough freedom or space to explore attraction to men as well. So when I came out as trans, I think even though I was still attracted to women, I think I was starting to, I guess, maybe stop thinking so much about gender, so that my attraction became beyond somebody's gender. So I think now I'd say I'm attracted to men, women, and other genders almost equally. Romantically and emotionally, though, I think I am probably attracted to women a lot more because I used to be one and my shared and my lived experience as a woman, and same with other genders. I think I probably have more I'm more attracted emotionally to people of other genders who are trans and non-binary because of that shared experience too. So I mean, I don't I think it's not fixed. So I think that might change over time as well, which is what I really like about these spectrums. So as I'm talking, you'll probably notice that medical intervention has not been any part of my journey here, of my identity on these spectrums. It's a part of my life, but it's not an important part of my gender identity or my gender history or sexuality or anything like that. It's different for all trans people. Not every trans person has medical interventions, and not all trans people feel that it's more important. And for some, their medical journey is more important than these parts of themselves, and that's also okay. It doesn't change how trans they are. So why I really like this spectrum is to show that everyone has genders and sexualities. This is not something that belongs to trans people or LGBT people. It is for everyone because we all have these parts of ourselves, even if we don't think about it. I'm going to give you your own gender unicorn to take with you after this, and you can print it out and colour in. But before that, I just want you to think about how you feel. Is there anything I told you that surprised you? Anything that doesn't quite fit what you thought? All those feelings are valid. And it actually tells us quite a lot about the assumptions that we have about people. It tells us a lot about It actually tells us a lot about the assumptions that we have about people, the things that we see as normal and expected. We can call them stereotypes, and we all have them about gender, expression, style, bodies. They're basically simple ideas about a group of people that we think is true, but not true for everyone in that group. That's stereotypes. And gender stereotypes, well, they're the reason why I'm here having to come out to you and tell you about who I really am, not what you think I am. Gender stereotypes make it harder for me to be able to explore my gender and say this is who I want to be. Because of my gender as a girl and a woman, I was told to behave in a certain way. And because of my presentation as a man, I'm spoken to and heard in a different way. Gender stereotypes don't just hurt trans and non-binary people like me. Gender stereotypes hurt lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer people. Gay people wear dresses. For example, I'm sure you've heard that one before. Lesbians just want to be men.
Pictures that match.
Sorry. Okay, Google, thought I was talking to them.
Here's a matching video.
Oh no. Please go away. So, let's start that one again. Gender stereotypes hurt lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer people. For example, we hear things like gay people just want to wear dresses, or lesbians want to be men. Queer is a word that I forgot to mention earlier, as a word that, when I talked about reclaiming certain words, queer is one of the words that a lot of LGBTQ people have reclaimed. Actually, I really identify with the word queer as well. When I talk about my sexuality, my identity, queer is one of the words that comes first. It was a word that was used as a slur against people like us, but now people under that community proclaim it and call it for themselves. And to me, that it's also important because it's quite a political word in that too. And back to gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes also hurt women. We get told that women are emotional, women are simply seen as mothers or nurses, and girls like the colour pink. Gender stereotypes also hurt men. Men get told to be strong, they get applauded for being loud. They're told boys don't cry, or man up. So gender stereotypes actually hurt everybody. And thinking about it, a lot of these gender stereotypes seem to discourage showing emotion, being sensitive, and they discourage being more than just beautiful. A lot of these characteristics we associate with femininity in people of all genders. We discourage and bully or joke about people who are like this, as if being associated with femininity is a bad thing. But how can something so powerful be a bad thing? I guess because it is powerful, people can be scared of it. So we stereotype and discourage and bully people who we think are more powerful than us. Often women, trans women, feminine people. There is a particular word for this. Sexism. Maybe you're wondering why I'm bringing up sexism right now. Well, let me read you a list of things that LGBTQ people hear on a daily basis, and maybe you'll understand why. Being told that getting catcalled is a compliment. Being asked if you want to meet boys by studying computer science or engineering. Being told you're only bisexual because you haven't met the right man yet. Gay men being asked for shopping advice. Being told, you're a lesbian, but you're so pretty. You used to be a girl, you can't tell. You're not a real woman. These are called microaggressions. They are small, subtle gestures or sayings or ways that can be easily overlooked, but over time they add up and they really push us down. A lot of the ways we think about and stereotype LGBTQ people is based on sexism. That is, the prejudice and discrimination based on someone's gender, gender expression, gender presentation, or assumed gender, which usually comes from, you guessed it, stereotypes. How we police men and masculinity through homophobia comes from how we view femininity as inferior. How we dictate binary genders through transphobia comes mostly from misogyny, trans misogyny, that trans women are somehow less than cis women. how we police people who show femininity because it somehow only belongs to women, or it's sexualized as if that's the only place their worth comes from, the only thing their femininity is for. So when we talk about gender diversity and ask for gender awareness, we must acknowledge sexism, misogyny, transmisogyny, and go further, demand gender liberation. This is why liberation and empowerment for these groups, women, trans women, LGBTQ people, will liberate and empower everyone. Until we are free, until we are all free, none of us are free. Emma Lazarus. And this is why I call myself a feminist. I believe that is what feminism is working towards. But that's for another masterclass. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for that, Sabah. We do have some questions, please, for you. So, over to Marco for the first question.
Hi. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you, Sabah. Really amazingly put and explained well for kids. I have a question that what would you say to people, or how would you approach people who insist on that there are only two genders because it's biology, because biology tells us and there's no other way around?
Thank you, Marco, for your comments. That's a good question. I mean, my initial reaction is just kind of like, how much does it really matter? Like, how much does it really matter to that person, whether there are two genders or three genders or 50 genders? I think we can get really stuck on what science says, and what other people say. But I also like to remember that science and research is not neutral either. So, for example, a lot of research and science based looking at ethnicities and race is conducted by people who held quite racist views. A lot of research and science around gender and biological differences are conducted by people, mostly men, who have also quite sexist views. So science is not neutral, and I think especially if and if it's not doing any harm to anyone, then it should be okay to for somebody to have a different gender identity. We also don't always know. We don't know what someone's gender is based on what they look like. So it feels quite silly to then try and police that. It sounds like questions like that come from wanting to control what people look like and what we think certain bodies should look like and things like that. But yeah, if it's I think that I'll leave it there because I know we've got quite a few questions as well.
Right, so our next question is posed from Rory.
Hi, Sabah. Thank you so much for a very eye-opening talk. My question is, how old were you when you started feeling differently and thinking about your gender identity?
Thanks, Rory. That's a good question. How old was I when I started thinking differently about my gender identity? It's funny because I think a lot of people expect transgender people to have been thinking about their gender from like when they were very little and like really young, but actually I didn't really have an idea of like gender being a thing until I was like probably in my teenage years, because I didn't think about like I was being a child, I didn't think about gender because it just was I was just being me. And I think it wasn't until I could hear those messages about people saying like, oh, the girls, 'cause referring to me and my sister, or calling us things or giving us things that reinforce what gender we were, or they wanted me to be, or what they thought I was. So yeah, I mean, it was, and I didn't really know about gender when I was younger. I think it wasn't until I started meeting LGBTQ people who were involved in activism and student politics and stuff, and they introduced to me just the idea that there are different genders and that you can change your gender, and that was really eye-opening. And at the same time, I was learning about feminism, and so like just understanding gender is like much more than just how I feel about it. It's also, it's very cultural and societal, and yeah, it just opened up a lot. It opened up space to explore it all. Um, yeah, I think I answered the questions. I have a very good tendency to like ramble and go off topic. Yeah, it's hard to pick an age, basically. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we all seem to go off topic sometimes, so it's all fine, I think. Right. So the next question is from Ben.
Hi, Sabah. My pronouns are he, him, like you said in your presentation. To just talk about your pronouns is a good thing. But in what ways can gender identity be expressed?
Oh, thanks for that. Using pronouns, Ben. That was really appreciated. In what ways can gender identity be expressed? Oh my goodness, like how long do we have? Like in so many different ways. Like I said, I think it's really personal, and it depends on, I guess, on what your gender identity means to you. I know some people who probably have a gender expression which stays the same, but their gender identities change, often and throughout time. Um, yeah, one thing I will say though is when I think about how your gender identity can be expressed is that it's not always the same for everyone, in that not everyone has the space where they can do that in a safe way, and it's really important that we acknowledge that too. And it doesn't change what your gender identity is. You can still be a trans man, a trans woman, non-binary, even if you aren't expressing it in the way you want to, or expressing it in the way that people think you should, or you're expected to. It's really about how you feel and how you identify, and that is valid, and that's enough, and no one can take that away from you.
Nice. Right. The next question is posed to us from Iona.
Hiya. I use she, her pronouns. I have a question from a primary school child who says, is it okay not to like girly things if you are a girl, or not to like manly things if you are a boy? And does it mean that you're gay if you don't like those things?
Cool, thanks, Iona. Um, so I'm just thinking back to the spectrums that I showed you, and how our sexual orientation, so whether we're straight or gay or bisexual, is separate to our gender expression and our gender identity. So we can be we can be gay, and our what we like doing and how we what our gender identity is can be totally different, which is also okay. I think this question touches on what I said about gender stereotypes, and I think it is a lot of stereotypes that tell us if we're a boy, then we have to do this, and if we're a girl, then we have to do this, and that makes us gay, or that makes us this, and um, can be quite hard to navigate that. I think it's all they do are really just limit the things we can like. But if you are whoever you are, I mean, you can if you're safe and if you're comfortable, then you should be able to explore what that is. And that also will change over time as well. So yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to share what you thought, Iona, about that as well.
Yeah, I think you're so right about if you're thinking like that, it does just limit what you can like, and what you do like doesn't affect your sexual orientation, doesn't make you gay or straight. I think that's a really good point.
Mm, thank you.
Oh man. Right. So next up we have. We get their name wrong. His name wrong. Raimono. I'm
Romano.
rubbish with names. I am so sorry. I am the worst person ever with names.
It's okay. I get it all the time. I use he, him pronouns, like Rowan said. And this is actually a question that I've had posed to me quite a few times, but I wanted to hear it from someone else. And the question is, how do I know if I'm trans?
Oh, I haven't had that one asked to me in a long time. Do you know if you're trans? I mean, it's a tough one because I think we if we're in a place where we're unsure about ourselves, then sometimes we do kind of want to be told. Like I know that I've had points in my life where I've just wanted to almost have a little survey that I could do myself and tick off some boxes and check that I'm trans, because it can be such a scary thing, and feel quite isolating as well, especially if you this if you're just thinking about it for the first time with yourself. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what I did instead, but I think it's just little things. I think finding the space to explore what being trans would look like for you in that instance. Would it be using different pronouns, or wearing something different, or using a different name? And it's really, yeah, it's really it's so personal. Romana, what have you said to people who've asked you this before?
Well, personally, I've gone on to talking about my hair, because my hair's been a very big part of my expression. But then I spoke about how I kind of tested the waters in places that I felt safe, like local LGBT groups, LGBT plus rather. I tested using pronouns, and I tested a new name, and it all just felt so right. But again, it is very, very personal.
That's so nice, and yeah, that's a really good point as well. Reminds me that there's no way to tell how you're trans or who's trans, because we're so different. But there are going to be some things about our experiences that we do share, and being in like LGBTQ groups or spaces can definitely help us to like realize that. Thank you.
Right, and that leads us on to the final question, which is pointers. Again, I'm pronunciation is really not my thing.
Hi, I'm Pinder. I use she, her pronouns. You sort of touched on this earlier, Sabah, but my question is that some people know that they've been trans sort of all along, and they talk about always having known that their gender identity didn't match. But for some people, it can take a lot longer. Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. And also, I think it's really nice that we're demonstrating we can make mistakes about people's names and stuff, and it's also okay just to say sorry and move on. So don't worry about it, Ryan. Yeah, so why do some people come out a different... Sorry, repeat the question, I just totally forgot it.
So some trans people say that they've known they've been trans all along, and that their gender identities never matched, and from being, sort of 3 or 4, they've known that they were a girl or known that they were a boy. But for some other people, it takes quite a long time for them to sort of figure that out. Why do you think that is?
It's a nice question, because I think we can also sometimes forget about like older trans people as well, because there is such a focus and spotlight on young people who are trans. I mean, I'm saying this, also because I'm a trans youth worker, so that is a lot of my kind of trans world. I think there are like a few different reasons. Ones which I can think of, again, around safety. So like how safe people feel like they can express themselves, which I've mentioned. Another thing I think is that I think also just where we are in our lives, and fear as well, and not knowing the language and not knowing what these words mean. I think that we're all brought up with these gender stereotypes and gender roles and expectations put on us, and we can really internalize that. So we can have a kind of internalized transphobia. So we oppress ourselves because we're so used to these messages of girls do this and boys do that. So it can be really hard to unlearn those things as well, and find people who you trust to have those conversations with. And that's a journey, and I think it's not easy, and it doesn't mean that there is a hatred for trans people. It's just we're just in the society trying to navigate it together. I think in other parts of the world, gender diversity and fluidity is much more um, accepted, and it's more celebrated. It's more parts of different cultures in different countries. So there's also that. Maybe some people just don't think about being trans or their gender identity because it's just a way of life almost. So I think it depends on your context a lot. Yeah, I hope that did answer the question in the end.
Yep, I think so. Allowed to just be them whenever they like. Right, and that kind of takes us to the end of this masterclass. So thank you for joining us. Thank you to Sabah for being our masterclass master, as it were.
Thank you so much.
You can find out more at the Just Like Us website, or justlikeus.org/masterclasses, or on social media. So the Facebook Just Like Us, and both the Instagram and Twitter is Just Like Us UK. Their Instagram handle is sabah.c, and on Twitter they are Sabah Choudrey. And finally, if you need any more help about being able to stay safe online, go visit the Just Like Us page on Better Online.